Welcome back, guys. This is a Second Opinion Sports Medicine podcast with the Pro Sports Doctors. I'm Dr. Dhokal.
I'm Dr. Glass.
And we are speaking to you tonight from San Diego per usual. This is episode 4 for us, and the weeks are going by quick.
Yeah, really quick.
I like this part of the year, the part of the football season, because I think in previous episodes I spoke about hitting a rhythm, and I feel like there's some continuity and some rhythm.
Getting some momentum going.
Some momentum.
Yeah.
We're one day off from our normal recording days. Normally we record Mondays. Today's Tuesday. So we've already had the Monday Night Football game with the Giants and Cowboys. So some interesting topics to talk about in that game. And some more injuries again this year. Not again this year, this week. Consistent through the year is what I meant to say.
Yeah. And
some, season-ending injuries, which I always hate to see, like I've said before. It's unfortunate. I wish it wasn't. Injuries are a part of the game. I wish season-ending injuries weren't a part of the game.
Yep. Comes with the territory, like you said, and can't predict it or, prevent them all. But as what we do and what the trainers do, we maximize their potential and try to get them as healthy as possible going into the season, and then, see what goes on. But when the injuries do come, hopefully the recovery on the back end's better based on what they've done working up into that point. So
you mentioned earlier today when we were talking before we hit play or record about a patient who had a ACL tear and she was young, and it made me think of all the people who see their favorite athletes on the weekends or during games get hurt, and then they have that same injury, right? So a lot of times they may look to their favorite player or somebody else who's had that same injury and use that as inspiration, which, hopefully we add to that in a sense that if they don't know how to navigate their injury or what to do or what to think or what the mindset should be maybe, because they have a team of people. If you're a pro athlete, you have a team of people, not only your friends and family who obviously want to support you as you've reached the pinnacle of your career, but a whole medical staff. And so the average high school kid or even younger these days, we're seeing some people with some aggressive injuries. Hopefully we can shed some light on how to feel about it, how to navigate it, how to get the answers that you need,
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And that's one thing nice about what we do, having the experience that we do with the pro teams, and being part of a sports medicine team. Like I tell my patients, I will bring everything I've learned from being around that to the office and give you the same kind of care, and you have access to it at least. So you have access to all the tools that we have. It's up to you, what you want to do. So,
Correct.
But at least that's one thing that I think is unique with our practices. We will bring the same kind of attitude, mentality, and drive that we have working with the teams and with the athletes than we will with our regular patients.
I think it works both ways for me. I've used certain things with my athletic population that I've also had great results with my general population, but also I've learned a lot using those modalities maybe or products with my general population and learned things that I was able to apply the other way to the professional athlete population, just through volume maybe perhaps. But it's both ways, but I do, that's something that I do have pride in, and that I'm glad that I can bring to my daily practice is just some experience from being outside the office in a maybe not so typical way.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point, though, and I haven't really thought of it that way, but I think that is one thing we do bring on the flip side of what I just said, going to the, athletes and stuff. They're so used, especially when we go to their homes or offsite, they're so used to being ingrained in that sports med and business like, and then when we get there and treat them more like a general population, I think you see their guards come down. You see their whole demeanor kind of just relax a little because it's not business at that point. I mean, their mentality of getting better, still business like, but now we're talking to them and we're actually explaining to them as a person versus as a commodity. So I think that's kind of a unique perspective that you brought up. So.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but what I was going to say was, and it gives you the time as well, right? If somebody comes into the office, I have like a hour block if you want like a pro athlete consultation, because it takes that long to go through.
Because we don't see them as often.
Correct.
A lot of times. That's why the time is
Yeah.
different. Whereas if we're seeing somebody, 3 times a week, we can do a 15, 20-minute thing versus an athlete that's traveling all over game days. We don't get to see it, so we block out. A lot of people, sorry to interrupt on that point, but I think a lot of my patients will wonder, well, why do they get that special treatment? Well, it's different because of how often they can see. I might see an athlete and not see them for months at a time or a whole season, until the off season, so we will spend more time.
Those are the tough ones. We haven't invented teleporting yet, and I don't have a PJ. I don't know if that's environmentally friendly, even if I did to fly one person, but don't get me wrong, I'd use it if I had it, right? But I often wish I could just be places to where I could, not that I'm such a hot commodity that everybody wants me, but the people that I do see, they're scattered around the country, and I do wish I could treat the home team on a Friday or Saturday, and then be somewhere on a Sunday to treat somebody else who needs it, but I appreciate the timeline. If you work with somebody over the course of a full season, or you work with somebody over the course of several seasons, not only do you develop that rapport, but I can like close my eyes and think about different people that I've worked on frequently over the years and know like, this is the area, this is what it feels like normally. I just it's ingrained. You know what I'm talking about. It might sound a little bit weird to some people, but like I know people's bodies, right? And so there's that develops over a long period of time of working with somebody with some frequency, which in my own practice with my general population of people who come in from all backgrounds of life and varieties of occupations. I started my practice a little differently than most practices. I started it out as a cash-based practice versus an insurance-based practice. That was for a reason. At one point in time, I wanted to do like preventative blood work, annual blood work for the reason of being preventative. Somebody just doesn't get diabetes on a Tuesday, right? Like they've been trending towards that for a while. And so if you came to me in 2009, we had your panel and not like your general physical blood panel that you get when you go to your GP, the generic one, but you have a full panel, you could really measure those metrics and track things. And so getting back to the point is that if you take a preventative approach to it, then you can have some better outcomes. And I've seen that's been successful. I've been happy to be able to kind of practice in a little bit of a different way and bring some of those different approaches to the general population,
For sure. Yeah.
How's your week been as far as patient load and patients that came in?
Yeah, it's been crazy. Today was a very busy hyperbaric day. We had several back-to-back hyperbarics, and right now my assistant's on maternity leave, so I'm running.
So it's all on you.
It's all on me. So so it's game time every 15, 30 minutes on the clock. So, but it's fun. It brings a different energy to the practice. But hyperbaric days are a little more because I clean it out, I get the sheets ready, we change it out every patient, we get so it's a whole routine that I'm having to do on my own. And when you have relatively back-to-backs, it's a busy day. So, but it was a good day.
I have some questions about that. So I think a lot of people may have heard of hyperbaric chambers. I know that you have one in your practice. We were talking about Dr. How do you pronounce it? Amen. Who has one in his practice as well. I know you utilize the hyperbaric chamber with several different injuries and things of that sort.
Correct.
Can you describe, like, first of all, why you got it, what motivated you to finally purchase one, because they're not cheap, and if I didn't know what it was, how would you explain why it's beneficial?
Yeah, and I think it's one of the most researched medical devices out there, but people don't have access to one, so people just don't know about it. But the research is out there. It's been around for a long time. Originally, most of the treatments were all done, and most people with scuba diving, the bends, helping with the oxygen and CO2 exchange. But then, having so there's hard chambers and mild chambers. They basically, the biggest difference is they go to different depths, per se, different pressures, right? So the milds don't go as deep. They're a lot they're safer. The research has come out to where we don't have to go as deep for most conditions anymore. There's only 13, I think it's 13 now, cases or conditions that insurance companies will actually cover and say that FDA says that these are valid for. So most other cases would be off-label, so we have to make sure that it is warranted and something that will be good, and we take them through a whole 20-30 minute checklist of things. I work with a medical doctor that oversees each case and makes sure that it is something that's good for them. But the basics is, regardless, milder hard chamber is basically we're working on a gas exchange thing. So every red blood cell carries for oxygen, right? So basically what we're doing, the gas under pressure liquefies. So if we can liquefy that oxygen and make it seep out of the red blood cell and seep out to every interstitial tissue there is, then we're going to have oxygen throughout the whole body. So that's basically what we're doing with hyperbarics, is we're allowing the oxygen to get to places that it normally wouldn't be able to get to.
So I'm going to play patient mode. Is it painful?
So it's nope. So one of the biggest things is we got to make sure that they can depressurize their ears. So just like going up in the mountains or going into a deep end of a pool, you will feel that for the first 3 to 5 minutes. We take the chamber, we take it real slow going through, so most people have no issues. If they have any kind of ear issues or have trouble clearing, then we either go super slow or it's just they're not a candidate for it. But after that first few minutes of just feeling that little pressure, and then you blow your nose or you open your ears or jaw, once it clears out, you don't feel it at all, and it's just kind of white noise in there. You just kind of take a nap, chill out, and just kind of lay there and recover. But it's a real nice treatment. The one, like today, like 15-year-old, female athlete, basketball player, tore ACL last week. They came in.
It's terrible. So young.
Yep, and getting ready
During
for college. This was during practice. So yep. So it's unfortunate, especially that age group. And female athletes are more susceptible to ACL injuries, and there's a number. We should talk about that at some point. Why would they be more susceptible? Because I think it's important for people to understand the why behind it, and then how to prevent certain things. But so she came in for a couple of days after their MRI. That she knew she had to have surgery yesterday, but they knew about hyperbarics. They had been through it with me. So anyways, dropping the inflammation, getting rid of the pain, and speeding that process up right away. What I'm getting to is she came in today, the day after surgery, with her doctor's approval, and she was in so much pain last night. She's in this brace. It's terrible at that age. And you don't know at that age. You think it's the end of the world, right? She had colleges, D1 colleges, contacting her. She's already on the radar. Probably, she's just spiraling, right? So normal progression is that you just have to wait for the next couple of weeks, get the inflammation down. We'll see you in a week for your post-op, and then kind of move on from there. But so that's a waiting game at that point, right? The best you can do is ice, rest, elevate. That's what they tell you. But now I give them the power, like, hey, we have some tools. You can actually come in right away, start doing that, start doing LED, laser, PMF, you can start doing all those things instantly, That
are going to have a positive benefit.
Exactly, because we're delivering more oxygen, more blood flow to the area, getting the microcirculation going, helping with tissue regeneration from day one. And the thing is, psychologically, now the player, the athlete, or the patient feels like they're doing something for it versus not doing anything. They're being proactive about it. So it's nice having these passive modalities that will do no harm once we know that there's no risks for them. They can come in and start doing from day one some kind of therapy for it. And what we see, it shaves off 2 to 3 weeks of rehab because they start as soon as possible and they're delivering tons of oxygen to the area. So
I think those things are so beneficial, and I wish maybe there needs to be like a little bit of education to, like, if there is such a thing as a GP anymore. It seems like that might be out the window. I kind of like the old way of how people used to practice, and that's what I like about what we do with some concierge, with some home visits. I think I was rambling a little bit earlier, but that's what I wanted to circle back to, is the old way of treating patients. I think really was a better way.
Yeah.
And it's not about the insurance model, although I don't love that model for
Right.
several reasons. That's probably a whole nother discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But I started my practice as a cash-based practice, so I wouldn't have to base decisions based on reimbursement.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was based upon, well, you obviously are paying out of pocket, hard-earned money
Mm-hmm.
for care. And so I know that you have a certain value for your health. And I think I get better outcomes with people who pay out of pocket, perhaps because they're, you know,
It's a little more investment.
It's a little more investment, right? Financially. And so I'm always cognizant of that. Like, hey, this isn't just a $10, $20 copay. And I'm always trying to provide more than what somebody paid and give all the extra time. And that gets me to my question. My point was really that I enjoy that old practice, the old way of practicing, getting to know your patients, going to people's homes if needed. You know, when you get to know a family or you get to know a person, other things that you don't have time to ask, maybe in a slotted amount of time, you get to know, right? Like their diet, their background, their experience, their stress level, all these things that matter. But getting to my point, knowing that, you know, you have a full schedule, I have a full schedule. How much do you explain these modalities and how helpful they are? Or do you just, you know, kind of take a minute or two to briefly explain it? That's something I kind of battle with. And I decide that based on my audience. Are you old or younger? Do I think you're going to understand it? Sometimes I have some biases that maybe I shouldn't, but how much do you explain those things?
So I would say it's in my DNA to be an educator and
Likewise,
explain. Yeah. So it's so hard. I try not to. Yeah. Because like you said, read the room kind of.
Sure.
And it depends on the person coming in. But it's hard for me not to, because I see the difference between when they're an educated person versus an uneducated, meaning me educating them versus not educating them.
Let's talk about
on
that.
Their outcome.
What's the difference on the outcome that you've seen?
So, well, once you educate and I explain the why behind, if I tell you, hey, just do these hamstring stretches, do these glute stretches and do this and then send you on your way, it's different than if I say, hey, we're going to lengthen these hamstrings because of this, that, and that. And this is what the hamstrings look like. See where they attach down here. And this is the action they do. Then now you have some ownership behind it versus just a blanketed do this, touch your toes, right? So then they'll go home and now they can picture it, right? So I want to involve them a little more than just tell them something, right? So that's the whole point. And so I want them to go home with that 24-hour, their ownership of it, and know and be a little more educated than their neighbor, right?
Yeah.
So, because that's why I always tell them, I say, I want you to be better than your neighbor, better than your teammate, right? I don't want you just to be like everybody else, you know?
It's
like,
also
I don't
a little
want you to
bit
be
preventative
normal.
too.
Yeah.
You know, and I know you're a big believer in the power of visualization.
Big time.
You know, I was visualizing the vertebrae and how to adjust it long before I was adjusting it.
Yep.
You know, I visualized throwing touchdowns long before I ever got to. And I think in athletics, it's important to visualize success. It's important to visualize the things that, you know, you want. And so I always enjoy it when a patient gets it. You see the light kind of turn on and they're like, oh, that makes sense. And when it makes sense to them, I really think it makes a difference, like to your point. And even more so if you can visualize the structure and how it looks and how it moves when, you know, you do certain actions, or you can explain that to somebody. That's awesome. I feel like they take that with them and then they know that for a long time, you know?
Yeah. And what I hope too is that they go home, and because what's the first thing somebody asks that either loves them or their coach or something?
Sure.
Hey, what's wrong with you? What did they say? You know?
Yeah.
And if they said, "Oh, just
that.
give me these stretches," then that's different than I got to do this because of this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And they take it a little further. Then it perks the person's interest a little more. Oh man, this guy seems like he knows what he's talking about. Or man, the other
even
person
at a basic level, even at a I don't know if you saw a couple weeks ago, Jameis Winston, the quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, had a post-game press conference, and he was talking about injuries. I don't know what the context was. I just saw the little clip, and it cracked me up, but it was so on point. And he was saying about injuries, well, you know, like the knees are kind of like the elbows, and, you know, your wrists are kind of like your ankles. And to be honest, like your shoulders are kind of like your hips. And he's right, talking about ball and socket, shoulder to hip, hinge joint, knee to elbow. And so he was 100% on point, but the way he said it was kind of comical.
Awesome. Yeah.
But he understood it, and I know what he was trying to say. And if you can make a patient even just understand it at that elementary level, that's a good start.
Yep, somebody got to him on that.
Yeah.
And it clicked for him, and then he regurgitated, so that's kind of what we're talking about. It's
Crack
funny
me
because
up.
you posted that, and then I reposted
Oh,
it for
did you?
yours.
Okay.
And I can't tell you how many times I've used it.
Okay.
I even used it today. My
Nice.
mother-in-law was in, and I wanted to explain, stability, mobility, mode, and then I broke it down into, I said,
We just need
your
that clip to
shoulders
hit
and then
play.
your hips,
Yeah.
right? And so, so it was pretty funny. But, yeah, based on your post, I paid it forward. And see,
That's hilarious.
Yeah, a little trickle effect.
Well, let's get to some football chit chat about this week's games. I,
Okay.
always like to catch up with you, but two things, and then we can circle back. One, I want to have a discussion on turf because I know there's a lot of differing opinions on artificial turf versus grass.
All right.
I have my opinions on it. Not one's evil and one's good or one's better or worse, although it is interesting when you see all the non-contact injuries. That's a big kind of term, non-contact. But I think it goes beyond the non-contact injuries. But before we get to that turf question, the injuries that I saw this week that were significant were numerous. On the LA Chargers, Jalen Guyton, a wide receiver, tore his ACL. He's out for the rest of the season. I believe he already had surgery. So my best wishes go out to him and really everyone who gets injured when I was saying to you earlier, it's just such a bummer knowing how much work goes into it. And I know some people look at it like, they get paid anyways.
That was the first thing in my head.
They already get paid.
Not that I was
matter.
saying that as an excuse, but that's
Sure.
what people say, right? It's okay. No.
I had a patient who's a grown person, has like 6 fantasy leagues, and said, it must be nice to go and play on Sundays and just have practice for a couple hours a day. And I said, hey man, let me just tell you what a normal day is like. Like if you have treatment, you're in at 6, at least for football. You can speak on basketball and baseball, but you're going in early before meetings. Meetings are at 8 or even earlier. So you're going in for treatment at 6. You have to be there. You can't miss treatment.
Right.
You have meetings till lunch, have lunch, and then you have walkthrough or practice for a couple hours outdoors. Before that weights or after that weights, and then more meetings in the evening, and then you go home. I mean, it's a full 8 to 5, if not 6 a.m. And if you're trying to make the team or you're a quarterback or you're trying to do more than the next person, you're trying to win your job, then you're not leaving at 5 because people watch and they know, I'm sure.
Yep.
And you're trying to put your time in just like we were in school. So
it's a grind.
It just bums me out when someone's out for the year. If you're injured, it's part of the game. But so he was out with an ACL injury, had surgery, I believe. The turf question really popped up to me when Sterling Shepard with the Giants yesterday, really towards the end of the game, he was running a route. Nobody around him, linear, so he wasn't cutting. It wasn't coming out of a break. He wasn't decelerating. It just seemed like he took a step and it went his left knee. It looked like he really severely injured it. He was in pain, and again, that's unfortunate. And I think they confirmed it was an ACL injury. He's out for the year. Rashawn Slater, left tackle for the Chargers. Big injury for them in that particular team. Your left tackle is super important, obviously, for any quarterback, especially if you're trying to protect your star quarterback. Especially if you're trying to protect your star quarterback who has hurt ribs.
Right.
So that's just that's terrible. And so I want to talk about the bicep tendon injury that he had. I'm familiar with it. I know you're familiar with it as well. I think it'd be interesting to speak on. But just to round out the other injuries before we go back, there was a couple high ankle sprains. That happens frequently, and I have patients ask me all the time, well, how's that different from, is that a regular ankle sprain? What's a high ankle sprain? What is that? So I want to touch on that.
Yeah, I'll talk.
And then Micah Hyde from the Bills, he was injured last Monday night while we were recording. We saw that live. That looked pretty scary. And there was, I think they said that he's out for the year as well. So that's, 2 receivers with ACLs. There's a left tackle with the bicep tendon injury. Some of that might be positional with the ACLs for the receivers. And then, kind of tragically 10-year vet, all-pro, Pro Bowler Micah Hyde with a neck injury that puts him out for the year. So praying for him, hoping that he comes back 100% and recovers, as well with everybody else, So out of those injuries, what jumps out at you that you want to speak on?
Oh yeah, we could talk on the ankle sprain. That's one we get all the time. Is high versus low? What's the difference? And the high ankle sprain is not as common. We see it a lot, right? But in the general public, it's not as common because of the way it's basically with an external rotation and a dorsiflexion type move. It's a forceful, so the cut, plant, twist. Most people are just stepping off the curb in the general population and rolling their ankle, right, or hit a rock or miss a step, roll their ankle, and that's basically a lower ankle sprain. There's basically some basic anatomy. There's 3 bones of that ankle joint that make up that ankle joint. You got the 2 bones that you talked about the other week, the tibia and the fibula. Yeah. You cracked me up when you said that. What did you say? The tibia? Yep, tibula. So now I have to watch myself tibula from saying that because you threw it in my head. No, sorry. Not at all. So the tibia and the fibula. So, and then going down towards the foot, you got the talus, the dome right there. So basically those 3 joints, and then you got the ligaments. And I pictured ligaments, and you got basically the 3 on each side, lateral and the medial side. Those are the ones I think of the most, and there's a ton of them there. But I think of the ligaments like pieces of duct tape, right? Mm-hmm. They connect bone to bone, right? And they don't stretch much. They can move and they're pliable enough but they connect the bones. And then you got the tendons, which are the muscles attached to the bones by the tendons. So you got all those structures going down there. Usually when you roll your ankle, the most common one is the lateral one, the ATFL, mm-hmm, right? So we know about that, and that's the most common that we hear. So
lateral meaning outside of the ankle. Typically, if you roll your ankle, you step on somebody, you mm-hmm twist it like that.
Twist it in like that, and so that the ligament in the front on the fibula. So mm-hmm, not going into too much anatomy with that, but just to give people kind of an idea.
But the tendons and ligaments, I think, are important, right? Mm-hmm. People hear that all the time. Somebody tore their Achilles tendon, somebody tore their ACL. They might mm-hmm not even know that the L in ACL is for ligament. And so those 2 things do have different structures, different movement patterns,
and you sprain,
different rates of injuries.
Sprain versus strain too, right?
Yeah.
Strain the muscle, strain the ligaments. So that's important for people. A lot of times people just throw out
Why don't you say that again a little slower for the people in the back?
So you can strain a muscle. Yeah. Or for the people or if people actually knew how small this area was. That's pretty funny. So you can strain a muscle and then you can sprain the ligaments. So typically when you hear a sprain, you want to think of those pieces of duct tape holding bone to bone. Yeah. Strain is like a hamstring strain or a calf strain. You strain the muscle, right? So getting back to the low, low is more common, a low ankle sprain. That's what we typically see the most for the general population. With athletes with quick acceleration and twisting, cutting, I think you were talking about with the ACL injury that we saw, that it was a linear move, right? Linear move, yeah. So, but when you're planting and cutting or doing something with some twisting, you're gonna what happens with the high ankle sprain. So we talked about the ligaments down below for the low ankle sprain. Mm-hmm. Moving up the leg, that's how you get the high ankle sprain. There's a ligament in between the tibia and the fibula that will, when it has that torque or that rotational component, that's the ligament that gets strained, the one between the 2 bones. And it runs from the bottom of the foot where the ankle is all the way up. And so that's why the high ankle sprain. So that happens in about 14% of the population, just to throw out stupid numbers. But that's how uncommon it is when we're seeing
longer healing time, important.
Yep. Longer healing time. Yeah, for sure. Because of the blood supply, because of the location of it and the type of rehab. You can't really, there's no braces for that post, so you can't lock it up. You can't tape. There are tape jobs to make it a little more secure, make it feel a little better, but there's no bracing for it post injury, where right when we recover the ankle and get it feel a little better for a low ankle sprain, we can wrap it up, tape it up, brace it to secure some of those ligament attachments. With the high ankle sprain, there's really nothing that they've tried that will actually do it as well. So it takes a little longer. But one interesting fact with the ankle is that, well, it doesn't matter. Let's move on. Yeah,
we'll get back to that. I wanted to,
but I hope that explains kind of the difference between the high and low ankle sprain.
Yeah, it's
people.
Important. Yeah, it's important. Well, let's take a quick little break right there, and we'll come back. And I want to get back to the other injuries we touched on because there's some important ones.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back, gang. This is a Second Opinion Sports Medicine podcast with the pro sports doctors, Dr. Dhokal,
Dr. Glass.
And well, just to explain, the reason we take a little break is we record in 30-minute segments. And so we want to keep the convo flowing for an hour, hour and a half, however long, wherever it takes us. But we try to wrap up the topic in about a half hour so we can reset the things and re-record. That's outside of my wheelhouse, but the team that helps us says that that's what we do, so that's what we do.
That's what we do, right?
Yeah. We were just talking about the injuries this last week. You spoke on high ankle sprains versus low ankle sprains, which is a very common question. We mentioned a couple of receivers that had ACL injuries. I do want to get to a turf conversation regarding just in general, but also specifically the Giants receiver Sterling Shepard, who had his injury. I have some thoughts. I want to get your opinion on that. But a biceps tendon injury, how familiar are you with that? What is that? Is that your bicep splits in half right here? Is it by your elbow? Is it up by your shoulder?
Right.
What's going on here, Doc?
Good question. Well, you got the bicep. Pretty much everybody knows where their bicep is. A lot of people don't realize that. Talking about the tendons, right? That's typically where we're going to get some tearing. It's typically not in the muscle belly. It's typically up more on the tendons. You got two tendons up top and one down below. So the one down below towards your elbow attaches below the elbow onto the radius, which is the bone that runs down your thumb side. Yeah. So you have one attachment there, and then on the upper side towards the top of your shoulder, you have one that goes onto the front of the shoulder where we have this little bone up top here right by the clavicle. That's on the scapula, which is your shoulder blade. So the front side of your shoulder blade, you have an attachment side, and then the long head goes where the labrum is. So a lot of people don't realize that when you tear a bicep tendon, if you tear the long head of the bicep tendon,
which goes to the labrum,
which is the suction cup that holds your shoulder in the socket.
Yep.
So that's where it gets a little more tricky. So that's where it'll get a little more problematic, because not only do you tear the bicep tendon, now you're looking at possibly a rotator cuff tear as well. So if it's the short head, not so much, or if it's down below on the radius side below the elbow, you're not going to have that rotator cuff. But typically, if you have it down towards the go ahead and go from there.
Yeah. So all I was going to say on that is, any tendon tear is a long-term injury, right? So you think of like an Achilles tendon, you think of a biceps tendon. Typically, those are longer, more serious injuries. And if you're playing a impact sport or a high velocity sport, especially if you're throwing, in this case, as a left tackle, specifically speaking, that individual is blocking and using his arms a lot. And so even if he had surgery right away, which I'm sure he will, and had that repaired, there's the whole process we spoke of healing time. And once he has mobility, that doesn't mean he can withstand a 300-pound guy or 250-pound guy, and that all that impact. So that's why he's out for the year, and it's for his safety. He's a young guy, and he'll be back 100%. I'm sure of it, just because that seems to be the trend with people with this type of injury, is that you can come back. And that's the important thing for him and for any fans of the team. It's definitely a devastating blow. It's the nature of the game. Every team, has these injuries. You hope it's not a major player that has them or a long-lasting injury,
Yeah. With the offensive line, that's mostly a pushing game,
Yeah.
But you all are also grabbing, which
and pulling.
Pulling in towards you, and don't want the ref seeing you do that, But that's part of the problem, is that the pec crosses over that bicep tendon, right? So your pec muscle that's used to push crosses over. So if you do tear that bicep tendon, and it is going to affect that pec muscle. So you got a double whammy, especially for a lineman there, and that's a problem. Luckily, I'm assuming it's higher up. If it's higher up, then it's more stable. It's more functional. If it's a lower tear, it becomes more unstable. So hopefully.
Hopefully it's
it's kind of a double,
less serious case.
Yeah, because down below is more unstable. Up above though also affects the rotator cuff. So it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't. Neither of them are good.
Neither are
so,
good.
Yeah,
right.
So and they do. a lot of people too think of what they call Popeye muscle, or I don't know, where when you tear it, depending on how the tear, it rolls up so yeah, it looks like you're flexing a ball right there. But it doesn't always have to be the case. When I tore mine, it literally was a deviated area or a deformity right where the pec is. So it was more on pec side than biceps.
Got you.
So
how long ago was that?
That was about 5 years ago.
Okay, so relatively recently.
Yeah, going up for a layup, playing 21,
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Wow,
yeah,
fragile. So no chest bumps for you then.
Went up for a layup and yeah, felt it.
That's terrible.
Came down. Yeah, it was not good.
Really? Did somebody hit your arm or something?
No.
No.
It was
trying to make it sound better.
Yeah, no. It was a couple.
Oh, that's terrible.
Mid 40-year-olds, you know, at a pizza party. The kids were in there. We were doing our thing.
And right away you knew it.
Yeah, it hurt really bad.
Oh,
yeah, I went down holding it, and
that's terrible for anybody. That's terrible for a chiropractor.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was not good. I had to muscle through that. Yeah. So,
you know, why not go off topic? I was looking to up my life insurance a couple years ago, and the guy told me I couldn't get malpractice insurance. I said, "Why, dude? Like, I could get injured. Something could happen." I was just curious how much it was. And he said, as chiropractors, we're one of the people that they don't typically insure for. What kind of insurance? I just lost my train of thought. Disability insurance. Thank you. Because, you know, we know all the nerve tests and like, I guess maybe how to bypass it or make up some sort of something. And I was like, holy cow. Well, that's really shitty, you know, for us as a profession as a whole. I'm sure there's other, you know, orthopedics can do that. A whole bunch of other people, I'm sure you don't restrict them, you know, but that was an interesting thing. So with the going along the lines of injuries, the other one that I thought was most interesting out of the ACLs was Sterling Shepard. I had 3 patients today who came in who were like, "Did you see last night's game? Did you see what happened? And like, what are your thoughts on that?" And you know, there's both sides to the coin. You can debate it, right? You can debate the turf, whether artificial turf is good or bad. I personally feel like grass is a better option than artificial turf as far as longevity. And if you're taking the players into account for several reasons, biomechanically, I guess I can get into that. But in short, what do you think about artificial turf? And do you think that leads to an increase in injuries?
Yeah, I haven't read the research or studies. I just hear kind of, you know,
there's a lot of anecdotal, right?
Yeah, exactly. And everybody's got an opinion on it. I do see a higher incidence of injuries coming in, you know, and I don't know if it's just because everybody wants to make a point. Oh, I was on turf and that's why it happened, you know. But just this weekend, we were down here in San Diego with my daughter Allie playing soccer, and you know, the girls they were playing on turf, but they're not wearing turf shoes because it's the longer type turf. It's like the grass turf. You know, there's different types of turf.
Short and
so they're not wearing turf shoes. They're wearing cleats, but. You know, she went for a ball and her legs went out from under her. A number of girls, So she went to push off.
Stuck.
No, she went to push off to go accelerate, and the back leg kept going. Yeah, and she was trying to save a ball from going out, and it was a quick change of direction, push off, and just went right out, and she had nowhere to go. So, but there was multiple girls. Another girl went to kick, and her leg just went right from out because there's no. It just moves differently, right?
Whereas so I go back and forth on that. Yeah, it's you could easily make the case that okay, grass is better, but grass in Chicago in January is not really grass. And so you could easily say, well, playing in the slop is going to cause a sprained ankle, cause somebody to get mud in their eyes, cause. So there's both sides to it. Not every climate is San Diego or in this case LA, I guess, under a dome. Yeah.
When I was working arena a lot, literally it's during the hockey season. So they would literally, and we would come out, we would be in the boxes, right?
It's terrible. The arena guys are warriors.
It was brutal. I love that. I wish it could come back and make its full. I don't know. I think there might be a few teams left, but it was great. But as you remember, like literally I remember being in the box to go out to the turf, and you can see the ice, and then you saw a piece of plywood,
Yeah.
and then literally carpet.
Just
was
carpet.
carpet. It
Thin
wasn't
carpet.
even. It was thin carpet,
Yeah.
and people didn't even realize. So they're playing on literally industrial carpet
On
with a
hardwood.
hardwood floor with
Yeah.
ice underneath,
Yeah.
and it was crazy. And these guys,
No
were
give.
Iron Man, no give at
No
all.
give.
No,
Yeah.
it was straight. Yeah, it was brutal. So that's
Oh,
a different
man.
type of turf that
Yeah.
people don't even think about, right? And so.
I don't even think they should call
different-
that turf. That should be like,
Yeah, you're
I don't
right.
know
I
what.
don't know. Just
Yeah.
brutal.
It's
That's what they should
aggressive,
call it,
though. Really aggressive.
No, so but they're quick. They're fast. So
I think the thing about turf to compare is that it has a little bit of give in my experience. And so footwear matters just like it does if you play on a grass surface. But, it might be better for grip perhaps, but it does just have this little minimal give that gives you these micro shifts, So if you're pivoting, if you're pushing, if you're planting, it just feels different. Now, I do think you get used to it.
Yeah.
It's, I think you adapt. These are high-level athletes, and so they adapt to really any condition.
Yeah.
You adapt to the rain, the snow, the cold, the heat, the humidity. So they adapt. But taking a medical look at it, or biomechanically speaking, I've wondered that many times myself, and with Sterling Shepard, he was just running and it gave. Look, there could be many debates made about that. You could say maybe he didn't have proper body work. Maybe he was really built quad to hamstring in an improper ratio. Maybe he tweaked it on a previous play and kept playing through it, and nobody knows about that. That happens all the time. I've had people this season tell me very similar things like, oh, I got hurt here, but I actually hurt it here, and then it went 4 plays later or the next series or whatever it was.
It'd be interesting to know, and not speculating on his, but a lot of times, especially with that linear pattern, what I have seen and what I've heard when talking with the podiatrists through some of the leagues, to learn different aspects of it, that big toe can play a factor in it. So, and we've heard of turf toe. So if you're having some turf toe issues or even any kind of big toe issues, it's going to affect that anterior tib, which helps with deceleration. So
that's your shin splint muscle.
Shin splint muscle. Yeah. So if the big toe is not working, it's going to throw off that, which then will not allow with that acceleration and deceleration type thing. So that could have an effect to it. So
there's a segment of the population whose practices some medicine that would be like, what is this guy talking about? The relationship between the big toe and the ACL. This is some hogwash, some voodoo. BS right now.
Yeah.
But
witchcraft.
It is.
It's what we do.
Really factual. It's really, there's a chain, there's a connection there to everything. And if you took the time and you wanted to understand, I think you could explain it to anybody, the athlete, to the weekend warrior, to a mom, to a 15-year-old. You could show them this to this to this to this, therefore this.
Right.
So that's one of the things that I appreciate. In fact, I went to my cousin's wedding this weekend, and on a switch gears on like what's good.
I was just gonna say, tell us what's good.
Well, I saw somebody there who I referred to you. She is a friend of the family's, and she lives up in your neck of the woods. And I'd referred her to you, and she said that she had seen you, and she's like, let him know that I'm going to come back. She had some life stuff happen, so she's had a gap in care. But one of the first things that we spoke about was, she's like, your friend Dustin, he explained everything. He was so good, so caring, such good energy. And so I wanted to relay that to you, not necessarily while we're recording, but what the heck, I wanted to tell you. And one, I appreciate it. Thank you. And two,
thank you.
She had good things to say. She hadn't really been adjusted before.
Right.
She has, some stuff going on that I'd like her to resolve. So, I saw her at the wedding. So on the what's good tip, I got to go to my cousin's wedding. One of my younger cousins, Cherie, got married to her now husband, Will. And it was a beautiful ceremony. Always good to see family. I have a big family. My mom's side, my dad's side, I have a ton of cousins. I'm the oldest of all my cousins. And so in a way, I kind of consider them all my younger brothers and sisters. At one point in time, I held them all while they were babies, And so it's cool to see them grow up and go from young kids to teenagers to now like equal adults. And, some of them ahead of me on the life scale with having families before I've started a family. So that's the real good stuff that's gone on. On a PSA tip, not to be throwing out PSAs every week. Last week there was some weird stuff that happened. This week I got back from the wedding, and I haven't told you this yet, but we got back Sunday afternoon, And Sunday night, I'm hanging out, reading a book, kind of made my list for the week. Yeah. And I heard what I thought was my neighbor cleaning out his garbage can. I have a townhome, and so our main living area is the third floor. It's going to sound weird, but our neighbor below us has the first and second floor below us, and then our townhome kind of is a little diagonal, and we have a first and second floor that's shifted off. But
that's kind of common out here. Yeah.
Is it? Yeah. So it's irrelevant to the story. My window was open. I thought I heard him cleaning out the garbage can, and I was like, that's what it sounded like psh, you know. And then it got louder, and I was like, oh, did he buy a pressure washer? I need to borrow that pressure washer because I've been looking to buy one. Like, man, he's really clean. And then I thought, well, it's not garbage day. Like, it's kind of weird. Normally you do that on. I didn't think twice of it. I just thought it was kind of late to be doing that. And I'm reading my book, and all of a sudden I look back and I see like a little bit of like a glow, and I look out my window, and behind our townhome is like a hillside with like landscaping, and the whole hillside is like a glow orange. I'm like, holy shit. Yeah. And within 5 seconds, my window was open. I smelled the smoke, like boom, 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 boom. It all made connections. Yeah. I'm like, wow, there's a fire right now. Like, what? Yeah. And my wife was in the shower, so I yell at her. I'm like, hey, we got to get out of here. There's a fire. And she's like, what? Yeah. I'm like, there's a fire. We need to get out of here, you know? Like, so she's getting dressed. I'm like trying to look through the window. I'm thinking my downstairs neighbors' place has gone up, and now that might affect our stairway. Maybe we can't get down. I looked down, and there was no fire there. Grabbed the dog. She's like, do I have time to put on shoes? I'm like, let's calm down. We have like 30 seconds, but we got to get out of here. Yeah. But also, like, I took 10 seconds and was like, okay, what do I need right now? Got the dog, got the wife. Let's go. Like, I spent about that much time. Yeah. I couldn't think anything that was like really necessary. Yeah. And we got out of there. And anyways, I could make this a 10-minute story about the chaos of it. But my neighbor had left his barbecue unattended, and it caught fire. I guess there was some oil or something he was using. He had a propane tank, and so he didn't tell me that. And I was knocking on doors trying to tell people, like, hey, get out. Because we had a fire extinguisher, and I was about to break the glass to get, you know, in case of emergency, break glass, right? It's an emergency. So I have to break the glass. I'm like, hey, go to the next building, get the fire extinguisher. And he goes, it's too big, bro. Like, let it go. It's too big. Okay. Like, and so I believed him. It was in his backyard. I'm on the third story. I could only like see the glow. Jeez. So I let it be. You know, I wasn't going to rush in there. I'm not like, you know, backdraft or anything. So I let it. But I was knocking on doors and ringing doorbells, and rang a doorbell. A mom answered with her baby. She took off. Her son was left behind. I grabbed him, and then boom, I'm talking like the loudest explosion. Damn. And that propane tank blew up.
No way. Jeez.
And Kelsey looked it up, and she said, there's only 600 propane tanks that blow up a year. So, like, I don't know how that even really happened. Odds, yeah. And I was like, that's so you to, like, look up that little tidbit, you know? But I was like, man, I wish I would have blown that out with the fire extinguisher, or, you know, maybe it was better. Maybe it would have blown when I was trying to, like, blow it out or save it. So whatever happened. But my thought on it was, I've never given thought to if there was a fire like you do in elementary school. You know, obviously stop, drop, and roll, obviously get out of the house. Yeah. If our stairway was on fire, I would have taken the bed mattress and thrown it down. We would have figured it out. But it made me think about what's important that I need to take with me. And honestly, there was nothing. Yeah. It was my wife and my dog. I grabbed my wedding ring. She left her rings just in a scatter. Yeah. I think with some pause, I'd grab her laptop, my laptop, or wedding rings, and us, and we're Gucci. We're good. We're like, that's it, you know? Yeah. Everything else is replaceable. But it did also make me think about buying a fireproof case to put in like my passport and birth certificate, some documents.
Just so you can grab it.
So grab it, or if you can't grab it, it's in a fireproof. So it made me reflect on that for a moment. Yeah. And so you have a family and kids. I'm sure you have like all sorts of escape plans. I never really thought of that before. And it was, I mean, it made my heart race. If I was wearing a Whoop, it would have been like spiked up. It was high intensity for a moment.
That's crazy, man.
But, you know.
Thank goodness you're okay.
Dude,
man.
Got good vibes, and the neighbor was okay. It just averted, you know, it could have been bad, and it wasn't bad. And it's 2 weeks in a row, so not 3 weeks in a row. You know? Heck, man? Yeah, I think somebody was like, man, that's wild. And I was like, I look at it the opposite. Like, I have some good luck and some protection around me that it could have been whatever. But yeah, so I'm going to look to get a little fireproof safe maybe. Yeah. And it was good to give a few minutes of thought of like, what would I grab? You know, because in the moment, I took 10 seconds maybe, and then I was like, okay, if you can't think of it, it's time to go.
Right.
So have you ever been in that situation with an emergency with the family?
Oh man.
I mean, I know the LA fires a couple years ago were big, and
we've had where we live at the foothills of a lot of these local fires that we have in there, and a couple of years in a row we've had it pretty close to where we're like the next line of evacuations. So it makes you think, okay, if we're going to have to do this, what are we going to do? But nothing that urgent or that sudden. So, that's scary.
Yeah, it was an interesting way to come back. And I was saying, if we had flown back later, you know, the fire trucks came very quick. They were there, and it was all handled probably within an hour and a half or something. So if we came back later on in the night, maybe we wouldn't have even known anything happened except for the smoke in our house, you know? Would have been like, what the heck happened here? Yeah. But so anyways, that's what's good in life, man. Once again, it's it just makes me pause and be thankful. I look at those things as like the universe kind of either giving you like a little, hey, wake up, or, you know, be appreciative. And you know, I'm glad to be healthy and to have a patient base that we can treat and help most people feel better. Yeah. Not every profession can do that, you know? Right. So that brings me to my next point. I know we started school together, but I don't know if I ever asked you why you got into chiropractic. Yeah,
it's a good question. And so we kind of touched upon it, I think, last episode or the episode before, but it really started, we were talking about rib injuries. It might have been last week.
Sure.
So that's kind of how my chiropractic journey started, was me getting injured. Like a lot of like first week of chiropractic college, everybody gets there, and every class you go to, the professor asks, why did you get into chiropractic? And so we all go around.
What's your why? Yeah.
Yep. And most people is because they've had some kind of issue that the chiropractic has helped. Right. I'd say majority of people get into chiropractic because they had their own experiences, and mine was the same. I just remember being in elementary school and having an issue from football, getting hit in the ribs and not being able to breathe, and my parents taking me to the chiropractor, and I just remember after a couple adjustments, it helping to where I didn't need anything else, and that he instilled in me. He was a Palmer doc too, and that's he really kind of paved the way for me in my thought process. Because from there on, he instilled in, hey, you have everything you need to heal yourself. We just need to help it a little.
Sure.
And as a chiropractor, I'm going to be that go between your natural ability to heal, and I'm going to help you accelerate that. And so I just remember how cool that was, that he could help me get back into the game, and pretty much with his hands, right?
Yeah.
And some modalities and stuff like that. But I just thought that was really cool. So since elementary school, it's all I've ever wanted to do.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it was really easy to stay focused on what I want to do. That back then, computers just started coming about. I love art, and I love drawing, and I really kind of was good at it back in the day. Freehand, pencil work. Anyways, so I wanted to be a computer, designer or something that I could use my art with computer skills, because computer was going to be the future. Graphic designer, thank you. But that really, computers were just kind of brand new. Didn't even know if that was it. So chiropractic was in the lead there, and that's all I kind of focused on. And so it was easy to stay focused. Undergrad, everything was just to get to chiropractic college. So everything I did was focused on that. And so,
dude, nice work.
Yeah.
So you really had like a primary focus from early on.
Yeah, and I'm not going to lie. When I got to high school, I was still going to my chiro. My chiro, man, was a good-looking dude, bachelor, had two golden retrievers, brought them to the office. Yeah. The retrievers were always in there. Good-looking guy.
Puma's here in the office.
Exactly, which every time I saw it, I always thought of my dog. And so he's a good-looking guy, always had two golden retrievers, which were my dogs back then. That's what I loved. Lived on the lake by our house, drove the nice car, Jaguar back then. It was nice. He dated a Playboy playmate.
So all this
everything.
You so
yeah, age. So in high school, I'm like, okay, that's the life right there.
The life.
So that was kind of my blueprint of like, okay, I want what he has, so let's do it. he ended up getting out of practice, and it wasn't what business wise wasn't what he wanted to do. But it was, and that was a different time. 80s and 90s was a different time in chiropractic.
Well,
money was flowing. Like the insurance companies, it was a totally different game. So
and that's important to touch on too. Is just like longevity in sports, there's longevity in careers. People who start in law, for instance, and maybe don't practice law 5-10 years later. There's been classmates that we know that we graduated with, and they're no longer practicing for different reasons, right? It might be a personal choice, or, maybe they made a better business decision for themselves or their family. So no judgment as far as that goes. But I think there's a couple things. One is, you're right. A couple decades ago, the insurance model was bill for anything, we'll pay for anything. And now it's different in the sense that you really have to justify everything, which sounds good. The problem in my experience, and something I wish more people would know, is that it's not really wellness care, it's more sickness care. Right. And the pharmaceutical company and the insurance companies typically are trying to maximize their profits, not maximize your health.
Right.
And so that sounds weird. It's a longer discussion, and we'll go into that at some point in time. But, chiropractically speaking, I got to clap it up to you for being in the profession for almost 20 years now and evolving your practice from, treating everybody, newborns to grandparents, right? High level athletes to working professionals to people who don't have jobs, who maybe can't afford care, but you still give care to. Right. And that's something that I pride myself on too, is I can't think of even one time we turned around anybody for care because they couldn't afford it.
Right.
We make something work if we need to. So yeah, that's interesting. I never knew that about you, but I'm glad that you did, because you're integral in my chiropractic school journey and helping me as a classmate and a teammate when we played some football together. And, it's about the relationships when you're on a team, whether it's athletics or whether you're in school. Right. And I feel like I'm lucky to have met you through that journey, along with a few of our other friends and colleagues. Really blessed, lifelong friends, and also colleagues that I can turn to for advice or for, motivation, insight.
No, I agree. And that's one thing. You want to surround yourself around people that not only that you can make their life better, but they bring something to the table too. And that's where, what I have in you, right? You don't just become friends and then stay friends for this long if there's not something there, where we can lean on each other and, have these conversations. So it's all good stuff.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Of course. No, I appreciate it. You make the time to drive down. It is really a highlight of my week. And I was saying earlier how it feels like in week 4, we've hit a little bit of rhythm with the football season, at least with myself. Usually on Mondays, I know I'm recording this podcast with you. Tuesdays is an NFL off day, so I hit treatments. Wednesdays, I see some people who are free agents waiting to get picked up by teams. I'm in the office Tuesday through Friday. So without boring you with my schedule, I'm starting to hit a routine with things. And this particular amount of time is at the top of the list of my quality time of the week, I'm having a lot of fun doing it. I enjoy our conversations. I feel like we could talk for 3-4 hours, to be honest, every week. And I'm always, I forgot to bring that up, or I wanted to discuss that. Yeah. But I have to remind myself, we're doing this weekly. We're committed for a long time. So we'll touch base on all those things. Yep. We try to cover the weekly injuries and also, share a little bit about our personal life. And so I appreciate you opening up and sharing some of that. Yeah. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up for today. We didn't get to talking about next week's games. I hope next week is a healthier week, that nobody's out for the whole season. Per usual, since we're trying to grow this audience, if you're listening, please follow or subscribe. You can follow us on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. We release our episodes Thursdays, and we're trying to keep on top of current injury trends, and also break down some information to our audience about sports medicine and how to be healthier. Yep. We had a few questions that some people left some comments and questions, so I encourage you to do that, those who are listening.
Which we love,
because we didn't get around to it today, but next week I promise we will. I want this to be a back and forth thing. I know you and I had discussed that as well. A give and take between our audience and whoever may be listening.
Yeah, I'm hoping we get more and more people feeling free to ask us as many questions, because if we don't know the answers, we're going to figure it out, and that's how we learn too, and learn and grow. So,
I mean, we want to be a resource, and I think you have the opportunity to ask the second opinion doctors for your own second opinion. You can go to our website, look us up, and schedule a consultation if you have a question regarding an injury of your own or just in general, or obviously reach out on our many channels, and you can reach us that way. But to wrap up, thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, we appreciate any of you guys who are listening. There'll be more insight and good vibes next week. Dustin, drive safe, and I look forward to seeing you in a week, my friend.
Thank you. Me too. Have a good one.
One last thing.
Yep.
Thank you to our team, Stephen and Manny, helping us behind the scenes.
They are.
We're just two docs who talk some shop, and they are getting it out to you.
They're making it happen for sure.
Anything you see is because of them, and we appreciate them and always want to give them love. So thank you guys. Okay.
Thank you guys.
We'll see you next week. Have a good week.
All right.